Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 11. This week we explore critical literacies with Boucher et al. And Dowie Chin et al. And I like to always ground us in the larger idea of the whole course and how it all works together when we're completing a weekly reading and doing the weekly work on the discussion board. We read with a dual purpose of learning about the sociocultural perspective on literacy, as well as how to do the ethnographic work to research the literacy practices around us. So we want to maintain that dual purpose for reading and keeping it grounded in the larger idea of how the course comes together. Two of the big ideas from Boucher, Lowe, and Smith that really jump out to me that I want to share with you are here on the slide. And the first quote there about how do we let students do critical literacy in a curriculum. This idea of the authors that students don't need to be taught about injustice, especially if you are a member of a historically marginalized group that has been experiencing an injustice all of your life. Do you need to hear someone tell you about your experiences? But instead, as educators, to look for ways to allow students to um, enact their knowledge in powerful ways. So that idea really jumped out at me. It was right up front on the second page of the article, I think. And then the other quote about critical literacies, to me, this quote clearly anchors this study or this study's perspective on literacy in the sociocultural realm because they're talking about um, understanding through an ideological lens or reading and making meaning through the ideological lens. So these two big ideas really jump out at me here from this article. And in our second reading, Dowie, Chin, Cowley, and Worlds, the big ideas here about the ideology behind whitewashing a text, the ideology at work in a whitewashed text. What is that doing to the text? Is it perhaps making it more appealing to a broader audience? If you go back to Hilary Jenks's work about reading the ideology in a text. Perhaps the whitewashing is using tropes that are a little bit easier for certain groups of readers to take in versus using the kind of raw, honest language that would be more in touch with the original text. In this case, it was the difference between the book and the movie, right? And then how do you help or set up critical discussions for students to compare the two texts, right? The original and then the whitewashed one. And why is it important to do that? And how does that then really help with a reading of the whitewashing in that text? So both of the texts this week really um, are having us think about reading it through this ideological lens. And much like the previous weeks, we will use the group discussion board to write about and think through the big ideas from the literature. As well, we're always thinking about ideas we can apply to our project. And I just wanted to touch base on a couple of those because this is our final week with the literature. So my suggestion is to pay attention to the author's writing styles, the tone they take toward their work. It's a scholarly tone. It's not overly emotional. The phrasing that these authors use to describe the context, to describe the research and the process of doing the work. If it's something particular and unique to this author, you can borrow their phrasing and be sure to cite that person. Alternatively, it could be something that's part of the larger discourse of sociocultural work. For example, talking about how the literacy practice is embedded in the context. That's not unique to one particular scholar saying that. But if you talked about critical awareness, critical consciousness raising, that might point back to Frere. And then finally, the labels that the authors use to describe groups of people, to describe the participants in their study. These are labels of representation, and you might draw some ideas for how to talk about marginalized groups, different demographic groups that have been historically marginalized, and so forth. It's best to avoid being too emotional, using too many adverbs, perhaps, to maintain your scholarly tone and carefully apply labels that are representing groups. These are things you can take from the literature to help you in the write-up of your final paper. And here's some advice or suggestions where you might want to be with your project this week. By now, you've received substantive feedback on your research design, and you will want to incorporate that feedback to the extent possible. Part of doing scholarly work is to always put your work out there for peer review and to get feedback so that you can strengthen and improve your work, right? And you want to be finalizing your data collection. So that's probably going to be gathering any artifacts, your focal text, your interviews. You want to kind of get it all together. And you're kind of at this tipping point of turning more toward analysis. And we've talked about how data collection and analysis is a back and forth process with qualitative work. But as you're finalizing data collection, we're really like tipping now into the analysis phase, if you will, if that's such a thing. And I put down here, do a data walk, and I believe Miriam and Tisdale referred to it using some different terms, but you want to take stock of everything you gathered, and it is always the researcher's decision about what data will remain and what data will not, what data will answer the research questions, what data is really tangential to that. But a data walk, if you want to visualize it with me, I think of walking through a big field with my arms stretched out, kind of, I'm laughing here, kind of feeling the golden grains of wheat around me, perhaps, or maybe I'm walking through a swimming pool with my arms out, pushing and pulling the water, back and forth. What do I have there? Touching it, getting in touch with it, um, getting a feel for what you've got and maybe where you want to go with it. Um, it may help to organize it in some fashion. If you've got paper copies of things, you might want to put it in a pile, interviews or artifacts, things like that. Or if it's all digital, maybe you want to put it into some kind of digital grouping if that helps. But all this while, you just want to sort of see what all is there and see what you've got. You don't really have a clear direction that you're going in yet, but you want to take stock and just really get in touch with what you've gathered. This brings us to a wrap up and looking ahead. Next week, week 12, is our final week with the literature. And moving forward, weeks 13 through the end of the semester will be dedicated then to independently working on your projects. There will be a final project presentation that you will share with your peers. And as always, I'm here for one-on-one consultations, which sounds really formal, but I'm available and I am always happy to talk to you, listen to where you are with your project, and help you kind of work through something if you're feeling stuck.